Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Facebook Live event. I have with me our police chief, Mike Ward. I want to say hi, Mike, for a second.
Afternoon, everybody.
So, this Facebook Live event, we try and do this once a month where we introduce one of our department heads or employees and basically ask questions to them that would come from the community of, why does the police department do certain things in the way that they do it? And just trying to share the information and the good things that we do, every day. And so as you're listening to some of the questions today, if you have any that you'd like to ask Mike, jot them down, and at the end, you'll have an opportunity to ask him some questions. So let's start off with just an introduction. So you've been here for a few months and in your role, and do you want to just tell the community a little bit about yourself for those that maybe didn't see your introduction from the city before? Just a little bit about yourself.
Sure, thanks for having me. So I'm originally from New England. My family's from New York City, Brooklyn. I'm a third generation police officer. Born and raised in the Hartford, Connecticut area. In 1994, I became a police officer in Montgomery County, Maryland, right outside of Washington, D.C. I worked there for 27 and a half years. My wife was also a police officer and then a detective there. And earlier this spring, it was time for me to retire. And we were looking for where we wanted to go next, and we had chosen Wyoming. And then Rollins chose us. And that's how we ended up in Rollins, Wyoming. And we've been here since July, and I was sworn in as the police chief in Rollins on August 3rd, I think. So it's been a few months.
Awesome. Perfect. That's a good intro. So we're going to jump into these questions now. And let's start with this first one here. Tell us about your department structure and what each area is responsible for.
So the Rollins Police Department is authorized to have a staff of about 35 sworn police officers and professional staff. Of that 35, and that may be a little bit high, it's about 30, 35. We're low. We're authorized 19 sworn officers. We're currently around 15, including myself. Patrol is usually the backbone of law enforcement agencies. So we have sergeants and officers who work on patrol in Rollins 24/7. Also under our patrol division is our school resource officer. Currently this year it's Sergeant Joel Robertson. Prior to that it was Sergeant Dave Greninger. SRO is a key element in our mission of providing security and safety for our community. A top priority for the department is the safety of our school systems for the students, the teachers, and the educators who work there. So we have one officer who is assigned to Carter County School District 1, and they cover the elementary school, the middle school, and the high school. Another element of the police department is the communications section, which includes our professional staff who answer calls for service, 911 calls, regular phone calls through. They're in charge of then dispatching both police officers and fire rescue and ambulance. They are also our records division, and they keep track of all of our records and our reports and warrants and so forth. Another aspect of the department is our investigation section. Normally in the past, we've had up to 2 detectives. They currently fall under Lieutenant Daria Hooper. We don't have any detectives right now because we're short, and we're hoping to fully staff the department and get another detective or 2 in there. Currently, Lieutenant Hooper is our investigator for the department. She's also in charge of our animal control unit. So we have 2 professional staff who work as animal control officers. They are tasked with enforcing the city ordinance having to do with animals. They mostly deal with domesticated animals. They do also deal with some nuisance animals like skunks and raccoons. They don't deal too much with wild animals, wildlife here in Wyoming. That would be Wyoming Fish and Game, but they do work closely with them. I've noticed that they spend about half of their time actually enforcing city ordinance, but the other half of their time they're actually caring for all the animals that they have, staying at the animal shelter, which they run on the east end of town. And they're very involved in that. They work with local veterinarians and they're feeding the animals and taking care of their medical needs. So other aspects of the department include our code enforcement officer. We currently have 2 code enforcement positions authorized. Only one of them is full. We're waiting to fill the second code enforcement officer. We're going to talk more about that when we start talking about the strategic plan, I believe. But our code enforcement officer is primarily tasked with enforcing 3 chapters of city ordinance. I believe it's 5, 8, and 12. He works closely with the community, and he's had a lot of success working with the community since I've been here. Actually, he's been here for about a year now. He's been doing that. For victim advocates are an extremely important part of the department. We have 2 full-time victim advocates, 1 part-time, and I believe 3 volunteers who work with the victims of crimes or events that the police department deals with. And they do an excellent service to our community. There's a lot of different aspects of what they do, but they do a very good job and really glad that they have them. And we also have an executive assistant, and her role is pretty much to work behind the scenes to make sure that everything works. And she does a fantastic job. So those are the different aspects of the Rollins Police Department.
So since you've been here just for a short amount of time and you came from a much bigger city, what were some of your observations coming to Rollins? I'm sure the community would be interested to hear that.
Right. So I did come from a larger jurisdiction, area-wise smaller, 500 square miles, but about 1.2, 1.3 million people. The department that I just came from was about 1,300 sworn officers plus a number of another. We were about 2,000 total employees in that department. And it's interesting coming from a large department to a smaller department. There are things that are actually more challenging working for a small department, and there are some things that are easier. So, for example, and by the way, I came here on purpose. And I think we're going to talk about that in a minute. But I found that the resources that I had in a larger department, are here. So the officers and the employees of the Rollins Police Department are tasked with wearing multiple hats or handling multiple responsibilities. So the lack of resources is an advantage that I have here that I don't have here. However, it's easy to get kind of lost in such a big community as where I came from. Where in Rollins, I'm learning all the advantages of a small town atmosphere and the fact that everybody knows everybody and everybody appreciates everybody else. There's a lot of respect between the people in this community. So that's one of the advantages I've noticed. I've gotten to know people better up here. I've gotten to know key players within the city of Rollins that I may not have had a chance to interact with in my last assignment, and I have to say that I'm really enjoying it. So those are some of the differences. I've noticed and I've suspected for a long time that the mission of law enforcement, of my profession, remains the same no matter where it's performed, whether it's in New York City or in a very rural area, in a very rural state, anywhere in this country. It's still the same mission. I've known that the men and women who work in the profession tend to share the same characteristics, same personality traits, the same things that led them into that profession tend to be the same anywhere you go. And I've found that to be exactly the same right here in Rollins. The officers and the civilians that I work with are exactly like the men and women that I used to work with. They're motivated by the same things, the same desire to do good and help other people. They have the same personality traits, the same characteristics, and quite frankly, they're really nice people, and I'm very fortunate to be working with them. That's how I feel, and I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, we're glad you're here too. The next question is, tell us about your vision for the police department and where you'd see us in 5 years, for example.
So I've been around long enough to know that whenever I start a new assignment, I have to watch for critical things that need to be addressed right away, and they tend to be rare, but otherwise sit back and acclimate myself to the new environment and then slowly identify things that could be improved or done better. That's the approach that I've taken throughout most of my career. It's the approach I've taken here in Rollins. I came in here knowing that I am unfamiliar with the culture of the town and the department itself. I don't think anybody likes somebody new coming in from the outside and immediately beginning to think they know how to do it better. I was very aware that that's not the position I wanted to be in. It's not my style anyway, but I'm very careful about that. So the approach that I've been taking has been to work with the team here, both the leadership team and the officers themselves, to identify things that could be done better, come up with a plan on how to do them better, and then slowly implement it. And that's the slow approach that I've been taking so far. So, for example, policy was something that was already being worked on. The department's written policies, which are critical to the performance of the mission. They provide the employees with guidance in certain circumstances. So that was already a topic that was being worked on here in Rollins, and now I'm integrating myself into that process as well. And I plan on continuing to work with the employees to identify which policies can be improved, which need to be totally rewritten, which may not be necessary, which may be missing that needed to be added. So over the next 5 years, that's one of the things that we're working on. I'd say one of my main goals has to be recruitment, hiring, and retention. One of my goals is to bring the Rollins Police Department up to full staffing with both civilian and sworn. And then over the next couple of years, letting the cat out of the bag here a little bit with you is I'd like to expand the size of the department. And those are conversations that I would engage in with the city manager and ultimately we go to the city council for their decision. So I'll be looking at the staffing, what we could do more if we had some more bodies, how I would apply them, ultimately down the road, hypothetically, if there were 2 SOs, I think that would be a great investment. I'd like to get the detective positions filled. My primary goal in terms of staffing right now is to ease some of the responsibilities that have been put on the current patrol officers who have been working 12-hour shifts and mandatory overtime just to maintain the staffing during very severe shortages of officers over the last year or so right here in Rollins. So I think over the next 5 years, top priority, staffing, and that usually boils down to recruitment, hiring, and then retention of officers. And other long-term goals like policy, and of course I'd be looking forward to moving into and continuing to work as part of the leadership here in Rollins in terms of leadership team working with the other department heads.
Excellent. And I saw that you updated your recent posting for job postings, and that looked really good and good improvements.
We rewrote our advertisement to recruit officers and added some of the benefits. We really talked about why Rollins is a great place to live. The beautiful scenery here in Carbon County, the access to outdoor recreation activities, the quality of the schools, the fact that we have great restaurants and small shops. And number one, and this is one of the reasons I came here. One of the top reasons I came here is that the people that live here are just really nice people. So we're using those as recruitment, those topics as recruitment, and we added them to the advertisement.
This is another really interesting one. Are there any common misconceptions about the police department?
I don't think that I've been here long enough to learn of any from the public. I am aware, I've been a police officer, not quite for 3 decades, but pushing it, that there are a lot of misconceptions about my profession in general. A lot of ironies in there too. I think law enforcement is one of the few professions that many people think that they know what it's all about and know how it's done, and that's not necessarily the case. And I think there's a couple of reasons for that. One of them is the fact that law enforcement is the topic of a lot of different entertainment venues, whether it's movies or television, and they tend to either romanticize or villainize law enforcement. I think a good number of people see these things and think that it's reality, and it's not entirely. So there might be kernels of truth in there, but usually it's for entertainment. It's not real. But it leads a lot of people to think that they do understand the profession of law enforcement, and not always the case. But we, as public servants, understand this, and we understand that it's our job to educate people and explain what we really do and how we do it. And that's part of our engagement efforts, and that's fine. There is an interest in the profession. Part of it is, I think, because of entertainment. I think another part of it is realistically and justifiably so, because there are very few professions that have such a dramatic impact on the community they serve. When you think about it, there's no other profession that has the authority to take away somebody's freedom. There's no other profession that has the responsibility to take a human being's life, to save another human being's life. And those are heavy, heavy responsibilities that every man and woman that works in this profession carries around with them every day. And we're aware of it. That's another one of the ironies. I don't know that the public understands that we know exactly how heavy these responsibilities are. And that these men and women come to work carrying them every day anyway. But anyway, I think for justifiable reasons, like the fact that there's so much responsibility placed on law enforcement, and the fact that the profession has been portrayed in entertainment for so long, the public is interested in this profession, and they should be, I think.
Where do you find you do most of the education with those misconceptions? What do you try and correct?
So it could be one-on-one when somebody has a complaint. I've seen several complaints come in, and by the way, we accept complaints in any manner or form. We do have a complaint form that we'd like people to fill out, but we will accept any complaint in any manner. If somebody just calls in and talks to a dispatcher, the standing orders are that they are to document, collect as much information, and then forward it to the chief of police. If somebody emails, we will accept it that way. If somebody makes a phone call and we just take some notes, we will still investigate any complaint. I have found over the course of my career, but also since I've been here in Rollins, a number of these complaints are just somebody not understanding something small. And that's totally understandable. And it's our job to then explain. So for example, there was a recent complaint about an accident report. And there's a section of the report where the comments, the information that the police receive initially when the call is brought in, are logged into some comments in the CAD section, computer-aided dispatch section, and that automatically gets added to the report. Well, one of the people involved in this report thought that those were the comments of the officer who wrote the report, which was a separate section. And once we worked with this citizen, this individual, and explained enough, that's not the officer saying that. That's just the information that we received in the beginning of when we received his call. What the officer was down to here, and then they understood that, and it wasn't an issue. So sometimes it's small things like that, one-on-one. Sometimes it's just talking to people, and sometimes it's in larger formats. This is a good example of one. Or it could be some of our engagement events like National Night Out, where we have an opportunity to talk to citizens that we serve in a relaxed environment. It could be any type of a meeting. It could be city council. It could be anywhere. But we look to not lose opportunities to engage with the public we serve. It's very important. And a lot of times there's questions and there's easy answers that people just aren't aware of and we don't want to show.
Yeah, there's a lot to learn in law enforcement. I mean, all the laws
It's a large
and rules
topic.
that you have to obey is, I mean, there's just ongoing teaching and learning opportunities.
Sure, yeah, the application of laws and policies, there's quite a, it's pretty complex.
It is, yeah, definitely. So one of the things that the community is starting to learn a little bit more about is we do have a strategic plan. The strategic plan is 5 key areas that the community themselves really, they gave the ideas of, here you go, right there. The strategic plan was initiated by the community through a survey, and we'll be doing another survey here pretty soon to see have we made progress on our strategic plan. And the strategic plan, I probably can't even read it from there, but we have employees, beautification, infrastructure, community trust and engagement, and then community and economic development. And so this question is for the police department specifically. So what role does the police department play in furthering the strategic plan?
I'm actually going to back up and start a little more broad, and I apologize.
Sure.
But when you and I were first speaking in this room, I think I might have asked you about a strategic plan. I can't remember how the topic came up,
Mhm.
but you went over to the wall and pulled off a framed document of the strategic plan and said, we actually have one, and this is it right here. And I know that you began to tell me about how much work had gone into it, leading up to having it. So strategic plans are very important for government, and especially for local government. They identify the goals, they identify the values of where local government wants to take their community and what they're going to do for the community in the near, middle, and faraway future. Um, and we have 5 elements to ours, and it provides a roadmap of where local government, what they've identified as priorities for the community, and how they're going to achieve those goals. So it's important to have a strategic plan. I think without a strategic plan to act as a map to get to those goals, local government's kind of like a rudderless ship just bobbing around in the waves. So I was really excited to see that we had a strategic plan here. And of the 5 elements, a number of them touch us more directly in the police department, and some of them not so much, but we're still involved.
Mhm.
So the first element here has to do with employees, and this is important because the employees are the ones providing the services to the city. So it's important to provide them with the tools that they need, the training, the education, and the support to achieve those things in the service to the community. So that's a critical component. A jurisdiction needs to take care of their employees so that they can then do their job and take care of the community. So Rollins has identified that as one of the 3 big elements of the strategic plan, dedicated to investing in the employees, devising policies that I mentioned earlier, showing a way to appreciate the employees and recognize their work. I'm reading off of this, I didn't memorize it, but I'm familiar with it generally. Providing direction and making sure that everybody's unified on the same mission, and improving the competitiveness in the employees in terms of their benefits, because that goes back to recruitment, hiring, and retention. We have to offer something to attract the best employees to work here in Rollins to provide the best services to the community here. So these are all important topics, and we are also heavily involved in these topics. So I mentioned policy. I'm not going to go too deeply into that, but we are rewriting policy within the police department. We've actually, prior to my arrival here, the department had contracted with a law firm that I'm actually familiar with on a national stage that works with law enforcement agencies to develop policy. That's ongoing right now. The policy, once again, provides the framework and the guidance for the officers and the professional staff to serve the public. We do invest within the police department with our training. We have a training budget, and we, of course, when officers are interested in going to training, we want to make sure that it's applicable and pertinent training. And if they have to travel somewhere, we want to make sure that it's not offered someplace closer. So we want to be responsible in that, but we do have a training budget, and we are very focused on training the officers so that they can do their job better. So this is an important part of the strategic plan. The second part has to do with beautification. So for Rollins to be successful, obviously we want to attract businesses and people to come live in Rollins, and the beautification of Rollins is an important element in that. This is one of the 5 pieces of the plan that the police department's a little bit more involved in, and it has to do with code enforcement. So our code enforcement officer is very involved in the beautification process of Rollins. And I'd like to point out, it's not just the citizens that he's working with, but he's also working with different other properties, businesses, even the city itself. There's areas that we control that need to be cleaned up a little bit. We're working on that right now. So we want to attract people here, whether they are run a business in town, or whether they're going to live here, or whether they're just visiting and passing through. We want it to be an attractive place for people to come to, have a good experience, and then either come back again if they're just passing through, or actually stay. So that's an area of the strategic plan that we are involved in fairly heavily. Infrastructure is another one. This is one of the ones we're not totally involved in due to our mission, but we do contribute to. So as one of the department heads for the city, as you know, under your leadership, we've all been working on different infrastructure projects that affect the entire city that may not fall under the purview of the police department, but we're going to contribute anyway. So the water system is one that we've been involved in, and the application and going after different grants to help infrastructure within the city. I do think the police department plays a role in supporting some of the infrastructure. I mean, certainly we are involved in traffic enforcement and making sure that our roads are safe and so forth. So when we apply our mission of protection and safety, it does overlap with infrastructure, but that's one of the ones that's not a main assignment to the police department. Community and trust and engagement is a big one. This is critical in the profession of law enforcement. We are actually get our authority to protect and serve by our legitimacy to do so from the public. They have to grant that authority to us and then have to believe that we are doing so fairly and justly for us to be effective. There are some more practical reasons that engagement and having a trusting relationship between a law enforcement agency and the community are important. There has to be the free flow of information. The public has to be comfortable communicating with the police department and the men and women that protect and serve them. They have to be our eyes and ears and report to us when there is information or a problem that we need to know about. I've also seen that, I've seen examples of where there was a lacking of a trusting relationship and a strong positive trusting relationship. And I've seen the outcomes in both of those examples when there's a problem within the community and the police department or the law enforcement agency that serves that community may not be aware of that problem. When there's a trusting relationship, the public then can bring that problem to the police and it can be addressed sooner. When there's not a trusting relationship and that does not get brought to the attention of law enforcement, it festers and grows and becomes a much bigger problem. So community engagement is critical. And we do this on a daily basis, just small things, just normal contacts we have with the community, but we also have organized events as well. National Night Out over the summer is a big one for all law enforcement agencies across the country. I've learned in Rollins that Halloween is a big event here, which is really kind of neat. The police department is heavily involved in Halloween in Rollins. We are putting together about 1,000 bags of information to hand out to students. We're heavily engaged in leading up to Halloween, teaching children in Rollins in the elementary school, the preschools, and in some cases child and daycare centers, Halloween safety, having to do with pedestrian safety and how to approach houses and how to be safe during Halloween. We're also going to be involved in some activities on Halloween, which I understand, and I've actually seen videos and pictures of the police department involved in some things historically on Halloween in Rollins, and really kind of looking forward to those things. Those are the types of community engagements that we're involved in. We're also involved in some more formal ones. We teach a number of classes throughout the year having to do with safety in the schools, or we teach safety in the banks when they request us to come in and talk about how to respond to a robbery at a bank, which fortunately I don't think happens very often here, but it's a concern to the banks, therefore it's a concern to us. Different programs like that our officers are teaching. Drug and alcohol issues are being taught by at least one of our lieutenants. He recently presented up at the Department of Corrections training facility here in Rollins. So those type of presentations are occurring rather frequently, and they're part of our community engagement.
That's huge.
It is.
That trust is everything, really.
It does boil down to that being pretty much everything. And then community and economic development is the last aspect, and I think that our role in that one is providing the safe environment here in Rollins. After 9/11 in New York City, the police department there's main mission was to make sure that everyone understood that they were there to protect after 9/11. They didn't want citizens or businesses to leave if they didn't feel safe in New York City. They went to great lengths. They created home and computer systems. They put more officers on the street. That's law enforcement's role, and that's a very big example. But that's law enforcement's role. If we're going to attract new businesses here, new restaurants, new commercial enterprises, if we're going to attract more people to live here, to work in those businesses, If we were to attract other larger things, maybe a state organization or something to make Rollins its home, Rollins has to be known as a safe and friendly environment to do so. And I think we're well on our way. We have great schools, we have a great community, the people that live here are fantastic. But it's the police department's job to ensure that that stays so that people will live here, that people will stop here as they're passing through, that people will visit the restaurants and the shops in town. That's our role right there, and that's our mission.
Awesome. Thanks for all the answers. That was really good. And you, this next one, you kind of answered this, but feel free to elaborate. What does the police department do in the way of community service?
So those are a lot of the things that I've already hit. We are also involved with one of the things I really like about Rollins and the people here is that everybody pitches in to help. So recently, the city organized a cleanup out on I-80 that a lot of the city employees took part in, and we did as well. The police department was out there on the highway, and we had 40, 50 city employees that were out there, and we picked up, I believe, almost a ton of trash. And I think we were a couple hundred pounds shy of a ton. But we picked up a ton of trash along 80 in the part of 80 that runs through the city of Rollins, so between 211 and 215, 216. We were out there for half a day, and that's the type of activity. The activity that gives back to the community, that makes it a little bit of a better place. Those are the things that the police department are involved in.
Awesome. So before we go into the Q&A portion, for anyone that has a question for you, are there any kind of final messages you'd just like to share with the community?
I mentioned earlier that the men and women that work in the Rollins Police Department are very similar to the men and women that I've had the experience and quite honestly the honor of working with. They're motivated by the same things, the desire to do good, to help other people. They carry the same personality traits and characteristics. They tend to be the similar traits and characteristics that draw people into a profession of helping other people. So in addition to that, I wanted to say that here in Rollins, all of our police officers and city employees live in Rollins. So in any jurisdiction, a law enforcement agency is a part of the community. Here in Rollins, they literally are a part of the community. They all live here. We all live here. Their kids go to the same schools. We all eat at the same restaurants. We all shop at the same stores. A lot of the employees of the police department coach teams that everybody else's children are on. They literally are a part of the community personally, and they're a part of the community professionally. On behalf of all of them, I can tell the community of Rollins that they will never not be there for you. That would be my message.
Awesome, thank you. And I just want to say thank you to you and all of our police officers and everyone in your department for what they do every day.
Thank you.
This profession has become harder these days through a lot of different things. And I have a high level of respect for what you do day in and day out. You know, you're risking your lives, you're doing these things that sometimes are frankly difficult to do. And we just have a lot of amazing people here. We really do. And I just want to tell them and you thank you for what you do in the city.
I suspect they're watching, otherwise I'll convey your message.
Good. Good. I hope they heard that. So let's go to the Q&A. Looks like we do have some questions.
Okay. So domestic violence is a question here. What is our approach in serving those affected by domestic violence? And this is a big part of what all law enforcement does nationwide. So in some ways, it's a little bit tough nut to crack. Domestic violence happens usually in homes behind closed doors, and we may not know about it unless it gets reported to us. But I think the sad fact is that there's quite a bit of domestic violence that doesn't get reported to the police, and therefore we don't have the opportunity to get involved and break a cycle of violence or provide any assistance. In terms of what we can do is we work with the court systems. Obviously, there are specific laws affecting domestic violence. This is one area where our victim advocates are extremely helpful and useful. They work with victims of domestic violence and in some cases provide them alternative shelter, kind of an off-ramp from the cycle to break that cycle. There's a lot of reasons why domestic violence sometimes continues. Sometimes there's a fear of leaving the home. Sometimes there is a dependency, either financially or just in terms of having a place to live. And these elements kind of lead towards keeping that circle going, circle of violence. So our victim advocates are specially trained and heavily involved in working with victims in general, but also victims of domestic violence to provide them with services and options that could help get a victim out of those circumstances. Even things like food and shelter and daycare are areas that they can have an impact on. And it's just one of the many reasons that the victim advocates are a critical component of the police department here in Rollins. What training is required both initially and annually for officers and other members of the new hire process? So thank you for this question because it hits directly upon our recruitment, hiring, and retention, what we're working on with that right now. So the hiring process here in Rollins involves the filling out of a city application, and we then schedule different elements of the testing process. They include a physical agility test, a written test, and an initial interview. What happens in Wyoming then is we have a civil service commission, one for police, one for fire. There's 3 members, 3 commissioners on the police on board. They then look at the people who have passed the initial elements of the testing process and vote them onto an eligibility list. Because of HR requirements, our next step is to make a conditional offer to an applicant, and that begins the next phases of the hiring process, including a intensive background investigation conducted by an investigator. There's also a psychological component, a physical exam component, and at the end of that, there's a list of applicants who have made it to that list, and then decisions are made on who to make a job offer to. We also are interested in hiring laterally, so there are very, very good applicants, and maybe the best applicant who maybe have no experience working in the field. They might be right out of college, right out of the military, they might be older and deciding to change professions. And sometimes they're the best applicant. Other times there are people who are already law enforcement officers who are already trained and are already sworn and already working, and they want to make a lateral move to a different department. There's certain advantages for us in those cases because they don't need to be retrained, they have the experience that they come with, and so forth. So laterally here, within the state, if you're already trained, it's easy to move laterally. Out of state, the Wyoming Post Police Officer Standards and Training Commission has a process where they can view somebody's previous training and experience, and then that applicant can challenge the requirements here in Wyoming and have portions of their training waived. They can be waived in. So what that means is if you're a police officer or a law enforcement officer in another state, it's possible to come to Wyoming and not have to go to the police academy, which is the next step in our hiring process for those that don't have that experience. Everybody in Wyoming goes through the Police Training Academy in Douglas. In Rollins, once you're hired, you are paid. You're paid to go. You're paid receiving a salary while you're being trained in Douglas, and we pay the tuition or registration of that academy for the applicant. So after the training, the basic academy in Douglas, then we have a period of field training where new officers are paired up with specially trained field training officers for about 12 to 14 weeks, maybe a little bit longer. where they go through field training and they are graded on their performance every day. This is a continuation of training, but it's also a grading period. And the officers are on the street under the supervision of the field training officer, running regular calls for service, and learning with a hands-on practical approach. So that is the process to become a police officer, to train to become one. Post also requires a certain number of hours every year for different types of training. There are specific topics that are mandated by the state, CPR every couple of years. We have firearms training. In Rollins, the officers train with firearms about once a month, and they qualify several times a year. So those are internal trainings that we have, and then we have external trainings that we send people to, and many of them in Wyoming count towards the hours that are mandated by the state for their training. And thank you for that question. And we are hiring. There are expired plate tags all over town. What is your plan to address this? So I would like a little more information on this, and I'm available to receive calls and emails at any time. So our officers are out 24/7, and traffic enforcement is part of their responsibility. So expired plates and tags all over town. I don't know the extent of this. I haven't noticed it myself. I would love to learn more. Enforcing traffic laws is part of our mission. I do know that from experience, sometimes people forget to put their new stickers on their tags, or it could be the case that there are people with expired tags that are still just driving around and shouldn't be. So this is part of our mission, part of our function. If anybody would like to give me more information about what this means, and all over town, I'm not quite clear if they're parked. Go ahead, Mark.
The comment did include some specific streets, so I can share those with you afterwards.
So I assume that these are parked vehicles, and if they're parked on the street, they need to have good registration. If they're in somebody's yard, there's different requirements for that. And I will take the information that we have, extra information that we have that's not written down here, and we will absolutely do it. This question has to do with what's my favorite color. It's green. What is your plan to address the issue with drugs such as meth, heroin in our community? I think all communities have problems with drugs and substance abuse. The main investigators in Wyoming, especially in the Rollins area for drug investigations, are the State Division of Criminal Investigation, or DCI. Currently, the state has agents that work this area. There is also task force officers that work in this area. Part of my vision for the future would be to have several detectives and have one of them assigned to a DCI, Drug Task Force, that operates here in Rollins. Right now, our one lieutenant who is an investigator works with them pretty closely. They do keep us informed of what they're doing, and in some cases, our patrol officers do assist them in their investigations. But primarily, that's their responsibility. So, drug and alcohol addiction is a serious issue. Fentanyl is all the opiates they're killing people every day. Not necessarily here in Rollins, but across the country. It's a serious issue. We do have Narcan that we carry in terms of when we can come across somebody who is overdosed on an opiate. The Narcan is a syringe that is not with a needle. It's a nasal application, and it is easy to administer, and it blocks the receptors that the opiate is attached to. And I've seen it firsthand save lives in the places I've worked before. So meth and heroin, it's here. It's everywhere. It's a big issue. I think it's important to try to do our best to divert people who are addicts away from that by exposing them to treatment. I found that the court systems, you can't force anybody to receive and accept treatment to break an addiction, but you can force them to be exposed to that. And the courts sometimes will sentence people to different diversion programs that then it's up to the individual to accept that or not to accept that. So that's one avenue. And then going after the people who traffic and peddle in literally the misery and death of other people. is something that law enforcement focuses on. Certainly we're not going to tolerate criminal behavior here in Rollins, and nor should we anywhere. But in terms of trafficking and distribution, that's typically something investigated by the state here. We will assist them in any way we can. And obviously, when our officers are on the street responding to calls and making traffic stops for traffic violations, they are always looking for indications of criminal activity, and certainly have no problem charging somebody criminally and holding them accountable in the court system.
All right. Well, I think that's all that we have. So thank you for joining us today. Hope you enjoyed the time here with Mike and answering the questions. So have a good Monday, everyone.
Thank you.